All right, Salakia for that ending early of the last video, but I wanted to make sure, man. Because sometimes when stuff like that happens, when you get incoming phone calls or incoming texts, sometimes that would screw with the audio of the video. I remember one time that actually happened to me, right? Using this very phone and this very app, doing the same thing, man. And the video had to be at least probably a good hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes long, man. Right. And during the recording of the video, I think it was around like the 25th minute mark. Right. I got a call and a text. Right. But I didn't think that it would mess with the audio of the video because I still seen the green dot at the top. So that's letting you know that the audio is still being recorded. Right. So I just continued on with the video, and like I said, that video had to be like at least 120 minutes long, man, right? It was around about maybe 3 years ago, right? It's still on my list to this day. Okay, well, that one is not on my list. I had to re-record it and do it over again. So that video is on the list. But I had to take it down because, someone told me that it wasn't no sound to it. And I was like, wow, no sound? What you mean no sound? I seen the green dot on the screen, everything should be all right. But come to find out, when I checked it myself, all the way from like the 25th, 30-minute mark, it was no sound for like a good hour almost. So I was like, wow, man, that messed me up, man. I was like, wow, man, I got to go and do this video all over again, right? But you know what? Worst come to worst, at the end of the day, if you're truly serving the Most High, right, you don't mind bringing this word out, right? Hey, sometime, so-called demonic forces, evil forces, man, right? They don't want this truth to get out. They don't want this word to get out, right? The only thing that they're going to do is just try to, alter your audio or mess up your visual, the picture, right? They'll black your screen out, right? This is what they do, man. I experienced all of that, man. But here's my thing. Like, if you want to believe in what you believe in, right? If you want to remain in darkness, if you want to remain in sin, if you want to remain in lies and deception, okay, and you believe what you believe to be true, then why don't you just combat the truth, right? That's all you got to do. Combat it, right? For everyone who's experienced that, you know what I'm saying? And you're listening to their video or whatever, not just me, right? Combat it. If you believe what is true, combat it. Get in the comment section and, state your case, right? Don't come mess up our video, right? Black out the screen, right? You block off the audio, right? So when the person's recording and they think everything is all right on their end, as in my case, I still see the green light. So I'm thinking everything's all good. Come to find out, the audio is gone. You know what I'm saying? So this is what these evil demonic people do, man. Right? Now, I'm not talking about the person who just sent me a message. Of course, I know the person. I'm not talking about them, not by a long shot. But at the end of the day, this is what people do, man. Especially like if they're eavesdropping in on you or listening to your conversation or whatever. They're working through the dark web, to eavesdrop on your phone. You know what I'm saying? To interfere in your phone or whatever with your reception or whatever. And these are the things they do. Why? Because they don't want this truth to come out, man. This truth is burning their ears, man, right? They don't want to hear you talking about you can't keep so-called Christmas, so-called New Year in the depth of winter, right? They don't want to hear that you can't eat that shellfish no more, that catfish, right? That roast duck, right? You can't have that so-called Thanksgiving ham no more, right? They don't want to hear that, man. Why? Because they love darkness. They love sin. They love deception, right? And then they look to control other people by keeping them in lies and deception and loving what's not true. So this is what this is, man. According to scripture, good is going to be against evil and evil is going to be against good. This is what this is, man. This is the great fallout, man. Right? This is prophetic right here. But it's all good. You know, the men of the Lord, man, you know, speaking for myself in general, we're going to keep on. We're going to keep bringing this word out. You know, no matter how it's going to be, no matter if it's in the streets, no matter if it's video or pistol, right, through flyers, whatever, man. We're going to keep bringing this word and this truth, man, right? But getting back to scripture, as it says in verse 23, and it read thus: Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy vows. Okay, so the Most High ain't down with your Christmas carols, man. Okay, he's not down with your so-called jolly songs, your sing-alongs for so-called Thanksgiving and New Year's in the depth of winter, man. Celebrating that ancient Greco-Roman demigod demon Janus, right? That's what you're commemorating, man. Okay, that's what the month January is named after, Janus. Look it up. Do the research yourself. You ain't got to just take my word for it, right? If you think I'm BSing, look it up, right? That's what you're celebrating, really. You're not celebrating the new year because according to the biblical scripture, the new year doesn't begin in the depth of winter. Okay, it begins around the same time as Pesach, which is known as Passover in the Latin English. All right, so the Most High don't want to hear your jingle bells, jingle all the way. No, he don't want to hear that. He don't want to hear dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. Right? He don't want to hear that, man. That's all crap to his ears, man. Right? And if you're a follower of Hamashiach, the true Hamashiach according to the scripture of Nazareth, and you're a believer of the Most High and a keeper of his laws, statutes, and commandments, then this should bother you too. Okay, but at the same time, we got to use wisdom. All right, because why? We're amongst presumptuous sinners, we're amongst willful sinners, and we're amongst the heathen. All right, so you got to use wisdom, man. Yeah, we don't like it because it goes against the Most High. It exalts itself against the Most High. And then all of these hypocritical people who claim that they love to go to church and they love God, they love the Bible, they love following the so-called Jesus Christos, which is known as Jesus Christ. They don't do anything that this book tells them to do, man. A bunch of hypocrites. Right? So we got to deal with it, man. This is what Hamashiach dealt with when he walked the earth in the flesh, man. But he overcame that. Right? This is what it means when it says he fulfilled the law. Okay, he fulfilled what he had to do pertaining the law. All right, so this is where, you know, the ordinary denominational Christian and churchgoer get it wrong at. You know, they talking about, oh, when Christ came, he fulfilled the law. He took away the law. Now we just dealing with the blood of Christ, man. But guess what? Christ himself didn't even say that, right? Christ says, think not that I've come to destroy the law. I did not come to destroy the law, but I came to fulfill the law. All right, to fulfill his prophecy that was spoken about from the old prophets, man, of the Old Testament, man. Right? Christ didn't do away with the law. Even Paul says it in the book of Romans, chapter 3, verses 30 to 31. Right? Do God forbid the law? No. Okay. God forbid. Did he do away with the law in roughly paraphrasing? Yet we reestablish the law. Okay, so when you reestablishing the law, you're establishing something that's already been put in place. You're reminding people, you're reminding the willful and presumptuous sinners, okay? And you're reminding the ignorant sinners who may not know that they're in sin, okay? This is why the Most High sends his people, man. He sends his mouthpieces. Who is his mouthpieces? Us, the ones who's keeping the law, statutes, the commandments of the Most High, the hopeful one-third elect, man. All right, this is what we're here to do. This is what we've been put here to do. Right? We've been chosen since the beginning of the world, man, as it says in the book of Jeremiah. All right. So the Most High is not dealing with these people, man. Okay. As it says here in verse 23, once again, take away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy vows. Okay, let's jump down to 25. Have ye offered unto me sacrifices and offerings in the wilderness 40 years, O house of Israel, which is Yashra Allah, right? So this is what the Most High is asking you, okay? To all of the people, right, of our nation of people who love to sin, okay? They love to keep all of these pagan festivals. They love to keep all of these vain holidays that's not biblical, right? So you're sacrificing onto all of these other idol demigods, right? Why not sacrifice onto the Most High, right? You're going all out for so-called Christ massacre, which is known as Christmas, right? Or Tammuz or Nimrodmas. Why not do the same for the Most High? Why not have a feast of dedication one year? Just give it a try, right? Why not celebrate the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Tabernacles, okay? Right? Some of our people will even dip a little bit left and celebrate so-called Kwanzaa, okay, which is right after so-called Christmas, right? Now, don't get me wrong, just like I said early in the video, with Kwanzaa, it's a man-made and created tradition, understood, but it's something that's created by the foundational Black Americans. Okay, so I give it a little bit of credibility because of that. Our people created it, and it's not about being prejudiced or racist or whatever, but it's about supporting your culture. It's about supporting your nationality and your ethnicity, right? So, and it's a righteous holiday, right? They have something like the menorah, the way it's designed, it holds 7 candles, just like the menorah, just like we're told to create it in the book of Exodus. And they light each candle every single day for 7 days, right? So Kwanzaa is not bad. It's a positive holiday. It teaches positivity to our people. You know what I'm saying? And it's not bad, but the faith in the religion that it's a part of, which is Pan-Africanism, I can't get with the Pan-Africanism. You know what I'm saying? Because just like I said earlier in the video, what Pan-Africanism believe is that all dark melanated people is a part of the same lineage and ethnicity. And that's not true. According to biblical scripture and standards, all black people is not a part of the same people. When Moses went down into so-called Egypt, which was Mizraim, okay, Salakia, well, when Christ, I should say, went down into so-called Egypt, right? He blended in with the people very fine, right? Him and his dad, Joseph and Mary, because, Herod, which was of the Roman Empire, they looked to persecute and kill Hamashiach. So Mary and Joseph had to take him and flee down into the land of Mizraim, known as Egypt, and he blended in well there. Okay? But that doesn't mean that Hamashiach and Joseph and Mary was a part of the same kind of people as the people that was there in the land of Mizraim. It was 2 totally different lineages. We just had similar colors. The descendants of Ham, they tend to be a bit darker. Not to say that we don't have dark-skinned people within our nationality or ethnicity of people. However, a majority of the Cushites, the Nubian Cushites that's from Ham, a majority of them tend to be very dark brown. All right. But nonetheless, Mary, Joseph, and Hamashiach blended in very well with the people of Mizraim because it is said that Hamashiach himself is very dark, according to the book of Revelation and the book of Daniel. All right. So that's what I don't agree with Pan-Africanism, right? And then also, just like I said, Kwanzaa is a positive holiday, a man-made holiday, but it's not biblical. There's nowhere in scripture that tells us to celebrate something called Kwanzaa. All right. So basically, this is what I'm explaining here. Okay, Salakia for that. So it says, take thou away from me the noise of thy song. Hold on 1 second. Salakia. Okay, Salakia, brothers and sisters. I'm back. Not too sure where I left off. I think it was verse 25, I believe I was speaking of. All right. So, as I was saying, the Most High has a controversy with his people, right? Because they're not sacrificing onto him. Okay. They're not offering anything to him. What's the sacrifices and the offerings that I'm speaking of? All right. Hopefully that I'm still on topic from what I was speaking about, because there was some visitors, and we pretty much was speaking about other topics, and that sort of threw me off a little bit, brothers and sisters. But the sacrifices and the offerings that I'm speaking of right now, that the Most High is questioning Yasharallah for, is, ain't none of you guys keeping the high holy days, right? The last time I checked, you guys wasn't keeping Pesach. You wasn't keeping the Chag Matzah, which is the Passover and the unleavened bread. You guys is not keeping the Feast of Weeks. You're not keeping the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, okay, which is also known as the Feast of Booths. You guys didn't keep the Feast of Dedication, or the Feast of Lights, or the Kanaka, or the Hanukkah, all right? You guys is not doing that. So the Most High is questioning his people like, yo, I see you going all out for everyone else. You're going out for Christmas. You're going all out for Thanksgiving. You're going all out for your spouses on so-called Lupercalia, which is the pagan orgy love festival from the ancient Greco-Roman Empire, right? You're celebrating Mardi Gras, which is another pagan love festival. You're celebrating Easter, all right? Supposedly Christ's mother, all right? And that's another worldly carnal day that has nothing to do with Christ. But these so-called ignorant, church-going, denominational Christians love to say that this has something to do with the death, burial, and resurrection of Hamashiach. Right? Easter have nothing to do with Christ, man. All right? So this is what our people are celebrating, man. This is what they're congregating on. So-called Memorial's Day. All right? So-called 4th of July. Okay? Which is 4th of July. So the Most High is like, yo, you going all out for these people, for these pagans, these heathens that's ruling over you, right? When's the last time have you went all out for me? When's the last time have you kept the 7th-day Shabbat, right? That's a part of my 10 commandments, by the way. One of the most important high holy days ever since the world's been created, man. Right? So you're doing all of this for the heathen, but you're not doing none of it for me. Right? Verse 26. But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Malak, which is Lord. Okay, Malak in the ancient Hebraic tongue means Lord, right? And Shayan, your images, the star of your God, right? So right here, this isn't referring to a literal star, all right? When you go into the scriptures, okay, it tells you that a star doesn't have angles and points. Okay, it doesn't have angles and points. So when the Most High speaks of the star, he's not talking about something that you see today that's known as stars, okay, which have angles and points, right? They have a certain number of points. Those are not stars, man. All right, according to the biblical scripture, stars are circles. Okay, so the next time you think of a star, think of the sun. Think of the moon. Yes, the moon. The moon is an illuminary in the heavens, all right? When the Most High said he created two great lights in the heavens, he's talking about the sun and the moon, okay? The moon doesn't get her light from the sun. The moon is her own luminary in the heavens, and she's also a circle. just like the sun. All right. So those are stars according to biblical scripture. Circles, not figures with points. Okay. So when the scripture says, you've created the star of your God, okay, which is Shayun, which is the false imagery that our people are worshiping today. Caesarea Borgia, okay, which is known as Jesus Christos, aka Jesus Christ, right? You have Muhammad in Islam, okay, you have Fuchsius, okay, you have um, Chemosh in East Asia, you have Krishna, Shiva, Madhava in ancient Egypt, okay, you have Queen Isis, all right, Horus, Heru, okay, you have the Egyptian Ankh, the so-called Jesus piece, which is the cross in the Caesarea Borgia's piece. Okay, you have your pagan statues. Okay, you have your Buddha statues. Okay, you got all of this in your house, right? Slakia. You got all of this in your house. You talking about that you serving the Most High, man, right? You have evil altars with all sorts of crystals and rocks and everything else. Have nothing to do with the Most High. The Most High don't have it written in Scripture. If you want to become spiritual, you got to get crystals and rocks and have an altar and practice evil divination, witchcraft, man. That's an abomination to the Most High. You're not supposed to be doing that, right? But this is what our people are into, man, right? Dipping and delving in all of these false religions, false philosophies, ideologies, and dogmas, man. Right? That's why we screwed up as a people today, man. Right? Calling yourself God. Right? Just because you're a little increased in the land, you got a little bit of money, you got your nice house or whatever, a nice car. So now you start feeling that you don't need the Most High. Right? You got your nice job or whatever, right? That's giving you 5 or 6 figures or whatever. So now you're saying, oh, I don't need God, right? Who is God? I don't need to go to church, right? Although we don't agree with going to church either. That's just a whorehouse, according to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 3 and 6. So we don't care about church neither. But at the same time, most church-going denominational Christians claim that they're holier than thou because they go to church, right? So when you start getting a little increased on the land, you start saying to yourself, oh, I don't need God. What is God? Who is God? I don't know any God. I'm God, right? The woman is God, right? Because she has a matrix. She have a womb. She brings life into the earth, right? But guess what? That matrix can't do a damn thing if she don't have a man. If a man don't inseminate a seed in her from him, from himself, from his testicles, that matrix can't do anything. All right. So the woman is not God, man. But you have these simps out here talking about the woman is God, right? So these are the sacrifices that the Most High is talking about, man. Talking about your sacrifice unto all of these other things, but you're not sacrificing unto me, Israel, right? What have you done for me lately, man? Just like Janet Jackson says, man. What have you done for the Most High lately, man? Right? Back to the book of Amos. But ye have borne the tabernacles of your Lord, which is Malak, and Shion, your images, the star of your God, which ye have made yourselves, man. All right? Idolaters, man. Just a bunch of pagan-minded, idol-worshiping people, man. Backsliding, 2/3 people of our nation, man. Right?